I wanted to make this video to show you an example of how you can graph exponential and logarithmic functions in MyMathLab. It's a little tricky, so let's take a look. So let's pick a problem that's pretty common, number 11 here in the 3.1 exponential functions section I've assigned. And let's take a look at what it's asking. Sorry for taking a second to load. Slow internet. Okay, so we're asked to graph f of x equals e to the negative x minus 3, all in the exponent. So in order to do this, the first thing you want to do in MyMathLab is recognize the base graph, which is y equals e to the x. So we first recognize that's the graph we will be shifting. So I need to type in the base e. I'm just using the keyboard here to write the letter e, type the letter e. Okay, and then how are we shifting it? If you go back to your notes, if you've forgotten, first we noticed that the negative 3 here means shifting to the right 3 units. So I'll be shifting right, and then I type in 3 units. And then the negative in front of the exponential x here tells us the signs of the x values are changing, which means we're reflecting over the y-axis. All right, so I hit check answer once I think I have that all correct. Well done, it says. Next up, I need to pick the graphing tool in order to make my graph. And of course, you're welcome to use a graphing calculator or Desmos.com, for example, the online graphing site, in order to get a visualization using technology. But if you're doing it with their graphing tool, I always recommend draw yourself a sketch on a piece of paper of what the 3 basic points would look like for y equals e to the x, and then what happens after you've shifted it right 3 units and then reflected it over the y-axis, and make sure that your graph ends up looking like the tool. Okay, so let's take a look here. To graph in this palette, what you need to do is first pick the appropriate curve. So since this is exponential, I'm not picking a parabola or a cubic function, but rather I'm going to pick either this function or this one. Which one looks exponential? Yeah, this one, exponential growth. This looks more like logarithmic growth. So I'm going to pick the exponential growth curve. Now technically you could pick a precise point, but it really doesn't matter for the purpose of this tool. Typically 0, 1 is a point on the graph of y equals e to the x, and then it'll be shifted. So I'm just going to pick that point for now. Once you pick that point, it's really important that you go left to right when completing this. I've noticed that it kind of has some glitches if you start skipping around. So first ask yourself, is there a vertical stretch or shrink? That would happen if there was a number in front of the x or in front of the base here, which is not happening, so we'll keep that as a 1. And similarly for the horizontal stretch and shrink, there are none of those. So going to the vertical shift now, that would happen if I was adding or subtracting a number at the end of the function, not in the exponent, so that's not happening. But I do have that horizontal shift to the right 3 units. So I'm going to replace the 0. I'm just going to delete the 0 and type in 3 because I'm moving 3 units to the right. And now I notice I am asked about reflections. Since we changed the signs of the x coordinates, we reflected over the y-axis. So I skipped the x-axis and now reflecting over the y. And you'll notice that the graph has now transformed. So it looks more like it's decreasing because of that reflection. Check really carefully that your base is the base of our function. In this case, it's e. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 or 10 or pi, anything like that. So got to make sure your base is correct, because otherwise your graph might look very similar but be slightly different because you're multiplying by a different base each time. When you're done, you should be able to hit the x if I'm not mistaken. Let's see if that works. Yes, and you should still see the graph. So again, check with the one that you graphed by hand or on Desmos or on your calculator. Make sure that some of the basic points are matching up. For example, at negative 3, I'm at 1, and you can check to see if that would match with your original. All right, hit save when you're ready, and then check answer. And if I've made no mistakes, it should give me a nice indicator like good job. Okay, so that's an example of graphing an exponential function with transformations in MyMathLab. Let's head over to a logarithmic one. So I'm going to head over to a different section, leave this page real fast, go back to my assignments. In Chapter 3, Exponential Functions, Logarithmic Functions, Section 2, Logarithmic Functions. And again, let's try number 11. That's one of the more popular ones students struggle with. Okay, so we see here a graph asking us to graph y equals, graph of x equals log base 3. That's really important, the right base. Argument in parentheses is x plus 2. So once again, same idea. You need to recognize that the original graph is being shifted. So I have the original graph, y equals log base 3 of x. How is it being shifted? Well, the inside parentheses, adding a number to x means shifting it to the left. Good job. 2 units in this case. So I'm shifting 2 units to the left. 2 units to the left. And I check my answer. Excellent, it says. Now the tool comes up, and once again, I highly recommend drawing your graph. Remember that a logarithmic function by hand, a logarithmic function that's growing, which means a base of bigger than 1, 3 is definitely bigger than 1, looks something like this, right? It's curving this way with original point at 1, 0 and the base 1, so 3, 1. So 1, 0 and 3, 1, somewhere like this. Your original graph is looking something like that. But now it's being shifted to the left, so we need to make sure that our graph ends up shifting that way. So I pick the appropriate curve, which in this case would be logarithmic. Okay, you can highlight it. There it goes. It says logarithm tool if you're not sure. And then picking a point on the graph. Again, you could randomly pick any point right now and the tool would still work. But I'm going to pick the one that was originally on y equals log base 3 of x, which is at 1, 0. And then I'm going to look at my tool down here. I can maybe move it up so you can see better. So again, start with the vertical stretch or shrink. Does that occur? Well, that would happen again if we had a number multiplied by the whole function or in front of the x. That would be a vertical or a horizontal stretch or shrink. Doesn't happen. A vertical shift up or down would happen if I added or subtracted a number at the very end here, which I don't. So that's not happening. But I do have that horizontal shift again. I'm moving to the left 2 units. So I'm going to take this slider and move it to -2 carefully. And you can see how that's actually shifting that graph. So instead of at 1, 0, now it's at -1, 0. Also be sure that if there was a reflection, you would click the appropriate box. If there was a negative in front of the whole thing or in front of the x, that would affect the reflections. And similarly, check to make sure that your base is correct. Here it's base 3. If it was base 2, I need to delete that. So let's hit the x once we are confident in our graph and check it with either Desmos, your graphing utility, or by hand. Hit save and check answer if you feel confident. Well done. All right, so I hope this video was helpful in how to use the tool of graphing in MyMathLab. I know it can be frustrating, but always feel free to reach out to me before you get frustrated. Again, I'd rather have you not do any homework than do it incorrectly over and over again, because once we start doing habits, they're hard to unlearn. All right, well, hope you are enjoying the math, and please, again, don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. In the meantime, happy practicing, because remember, math is not a spectator sport. I'll see you next time.